God, frame it serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Welcome to the Thursday night Emotional Sobriety Workshop. This is not a formal AA meeting, but rather a workshop put on by men and women interested in the continuation and maintenance of a spiritual awakening to stay recovered from alcoholism. This is not a substitute for 12-step Big Book recovery. In fact, we think our exploration of this letter will only be relevant to someone who is actively working the program of recovery that is outlined masterfully in our AA Big Book. Everyone is encouraged to share what they are working on to mature and grow spiritually. Please enjoy the conversation and allow others to do the same by maintaining an attitude of open-mindedness and tolerance. Our workshops this summer will be recorded in order to allow other members of our fellowship to enjoy these conversations, so please be mindful of that when sharing. Our meeting will begin with the reading of Bill Wilson's 1958 essay, The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety. After the reading, we'll have a lead share, and the meeting will then be open for participation or questions. And tonight, Sam will be reading the essay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sam. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm going to read this essay, and if you're new to this meeting, it's a little bit long, so try and hang with me on this. We're going to post it up, and then it'll go back to the regular Zoom view. But this is the only reading that we do. So, Love, The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety, January 1958. I think that many oldsters who have put our AA booze cure to severe but successful tests still find they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development in AA, the development of a much more real maturity and balance, which is to say humility in our relations with ourselves, with our fellows, and with God. Those adolescent urges that so many of us have for top approval, perfect security, and perfect romance. Urges quite appropriate at age 17 proved to be an impossible way of life when we were at age 47 or 57. Since AA began, I have taken immense wallops in these areas because of my failure to grow up, emotionally and spiritually. My God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible, and how very painful to discover finally that all along we have had the cart before the horse. Then comes the final agony of seeing how awfully wrong we have been, but still finding ourselves unable to get off the emotional merry-go-round. How to translate a right mental conviction into a right emotional result, and so into easy, happy, and good living. Well, that's not only a neurotics problem, it's a problem of life itself for all of us who have got to the point of real willingness to hew to right principles in all of our affairs. Even then, as we hew away, peace and joy may still elude us, and that's that place so many of us AA oldsters have come to, and it's a hell of a spot, literally. How shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want? How to convince our dumb, raging, and hidden Mr. Hyde becomes our main task. I've recently come to believe that this can be achieved. I believe so because I begin to see many benighted ones, folks like you and me, commencing to get results. Last autumn, depression, having no real rational cause at all, almost took me to the cleaners. I began to be scared that I was in for another long, chronic spell. Considering the grief I've had with depression, it wasn't a bright prospect. I kept asking myself, why can't the 12 steps work to release depression? By the hour, I stared at the St. Francis prayer. It is better to comfort than to be comforted. Here was the formula, all right, but why didn't it work? Suddenly, I realized what the matter was. My basic flaw had always been dependence, almost absolute dependence on people and circumstances to supply me with prestige, security, and the like. Failing to get these things according to my perfectionist dreams and specifications, I had fought for them. And when defeat came, so did my depression. There wasn't a chance of making the outgoing love of St. Francis a workable and joyous way of life until these fatal and almost absolute dependencies were cut away. Because I had over the years undergone a little spiritual development, the absolute quality of these frightful dependencies had never before been so starkly revealed. Reinforced by what grace I could secure in prayer, I found I had to exert every ounce of will and action to cut off these faulty emotional dependencies upon people, upon AA, and indeed upon any set of circumstances whatsoever. Then only could I be free to love as Francis had. Emotional and instinctual satisfactions I saw were really the extra dividends of having love, offering love, and expressing a love appropriate to each relation to life. Plainly, I could not avail myself to God's love until I was able to offer it back to him by loving others as he would have me. And I couldn't possibly do that so long as I was victimized by false dependencies. For my dependency meant demand, a demand for the possession and control of the people and conditions surrounding me. While those words absolute dependency may look like a gimmick, they were the ones that helped to trigger my release into my present degree of stability and quietness of mind, qualities which I am now trying to consolidate by offering love to others regardless of their return to me. This seems to be the primary healing circuit. An outgoing love of God's creation and his people by means of which we avail ourselves of his love for us. It is most clear that the real current can't flow until our paralyzing dependencies are broken and broken to death. Only then can we possibly have a glimmer of what adult love really is. Spiritual calculus, you say? Not a bit of it. Watch any AA of 6 months working with a new 12-step case. If the case says to the devil with you, the 12-stepper only smiles and turns to another case. He doesn't feel frustrated or rejected. If in his next case responds, in turn starts to give love and attention to other alcoholics, yet gives none back to him, the sponsor is happy about it anyway. He still doesn't feel rejected. Instead, he rejoices that his one-time prospect is sober and happy. And if his next following case turns out in later time to be his best friend or romance, then the sponsor is most joyful. But he well knows that his happiness is a byproduct, the extra dividend of giving without any demand for return. The really stabilizing thing for him was having and offering love to that strange drunk on his doorstep. That was Francis at work, powerful and practical, minus dependency and minus demand. In the first 6 months of my own sobriety, I worked hard with many alcoholics. Not a one responded, yet this work kept me sober. It wasn't a question of those alcoholics giving me anything. My stability came out of trying to give, not out of demanding that I receive. Thus, I think it can work out with emotional sobriety. If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root of it some unhealthy dependency and its consequent unhealthy demand. Let us, with God's help, continually surrender these hobbling demands. Then we can be set free to live and love. We may then be able to 12-step ourselves and others into emotional sobriety. Of course, I haven't offered you any real new idea, only a gimmick that has started to unhook several of my own hexes of depth. Nowadays, my brain no longer races compulsively in either elation, grandiosity, or depression. I have been given a quiet place in the bright sunshine. And so without further ado, one of the people that I've listened to for a long time, and I use the term loosely, but heroes or people that we look up to or mentors in sobriety, I finally was able to get in touch with this last week and agreed to do this meeting. So I'm really excited to hear Jay. He's a wonderful member of AA as far as I can tell, and he's a historian, very well-educated man, and is truly a seeker. So it's such a privilege to get to do this, and it's a lot of fun to get to have people that you really look up to speak. So without further ado, Jay, take it away, man.
Thanks, Chris. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jay Stennett, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's a tremendous privilege to be with you this evening. This path that we're on is an incredible gift, and I see a lot of friends here, a lot of the usual suspects, and it's just delightful to be with you. One of my I'd like to let's see. First of all, I need to tell you, anybody that I haven't had the privilege of getting to know, that I came to you on the second day of May in 1979, and although I've found it necessary on a lot of occasions, I haven't taken the front drink, I haven't sniffed any glue, I haven't done any of that other stuff that I found to be so consoling. I did my first inventory when I was 24 days sober. I did my fifth step when I was 25 days sober. And was it a fearless and thorough moral inventory using all four columns? No. It was the greatest hits, but it was enough to get me going. I got my first sponsee when I was 28 days sober. Guy asked me and he said, will you help me? And I called my sponsor up and I said, hey, this guy asked me to sponsor him. What do I do? He said, Jay, you say yes. I said, really? He said, Jay, if they're sick enough to ask you for help, you can't hurt them. So Chris was kind enough to ask me to participate this evening in this wonderful workshop. And given the amount of brain damage that I'm familiar with on this screen, I know that I can't hurt him. So anyway, I want you to know that this is going to be mostly my experience and some opinions. And my opinions are really good ones and they should be yours, but we'll see how you respond to all of that. I want to start out reading a little line from a letter that Bill wrote in 1962. And he's talking about the fellowship to a man that had helped found AA in Akron, Roland Jones. And he says to Roland, at this stage, the dependence should be on God and not upon the elders of AA. Let me repeat that. Our dependence should be on God and not the elders of AA. Our fellowship has now come to its time of full responsibility, and that responsibility is to be placed squarely on the shoulders of the fellowship. And so, when I'm asked to do workshops and the like, one of my favorite things in the tradition is where it says that every AA group ought to be a spiritual entity, having but one primary purpose. And I know this isn't an AA group, but what I'd like to do is this evening I'm going to lead you through a couple of exercises. What I think about things is very entertaining, but what I do is entirely different. And if you're here and you do not have a meditative practice, let me tell you that 5 years from now, it's not going to matter what you drive, who you sleep with, where you work, who your sponsor is, how many sponsees you got. The only thing that's fundamentally going to improve your life is, did you meditate today? And the solution that we have cannot enter a closed fist, to quote my fabulous wife, Adele Shea, who sends her very best. And so what we need to do is we need to open ourselves to whatever this power is. And when I say God, please don't hang anything on me that from your own experience. When I say God, what I really mean is the love that I found in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. But just to get started, why don't we do this? If you'd be kind enough to just close your eyes for a moment, let's take a couple of deep breaths. Blow them out. And with your eyes still closed, would you be kind enough to go back in your mind's eye to that first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that you attended? And if you'd be kind enough, just enter the room as you did. Enter the building. What did it look like? And when you came into the room, what was on the walls? Who was there? How did they meet you? And how did they greet you? And what about your first sponsor? What about the time that they took to help you? The sacrifices they made and their commitments to their family and maybe to their employers. And what about your sponsor's friends? And that community that supported them as they supported you? And are we meeting the people that come into these Zoom meetings with that same loving attention? So thank you. So our friends in the medical industry say that if you have 2.5 years of abstinence, you have long-term recovery. I like that. I like that. If you're 3 or 5 years sober, you've got long-term recovery. 86 years ago, drug addiction and alcoholism is a death sentence. And yet something happened. And everybody, you couldn't get this many people together that were sober 86 years ago. And yet here we are. And as we walk this path that has been so elegantly laid out to us, there are things that we get to do. And one of the things that that I think that we really are taught in the fellowships is that we go first. The St. Francis prayer is pure Oxford group. And Wilson, when he talks about this love being the key, in the Oxford group, they had 4 standards. Honesty, because we got to get clear about who and where we are. Second is purity. And by purity, I mean being able to ascertain my intentions. The third is unselfishness. These are all steps up in the evolution of consciousness. And the last is love. Because once we've been able to establish an unselfish heart, we have the ability to share it with others. And so this idea that love is indeed the key, and that, in my opinion, what we need to do is we need to love fearlessly. We need to love recklessly, because love cannot be hurt. Our hearts may be broken, but love cannot be hurt. And so we're, excuse me just a second, I want to, so when we take a look at these dependencies that Wilson's talking about in this essay, basically it's a restatement of the 6th and 7th step. And and this is all in medieval language. Carl Jung, when he and Bill corresponded in the first, when he said that that many times we use medieval language and it gets so confusing that we can't say much without being misunderstood. And and this ability to see words and things in a way in this era very different from 150 years ago. Bill Wilson was literally schooled by people that were born 150 years ago. And the language and the concepts that he got is, for the time and place, is fantastic. But for the current era, how is it that we can allow ourselves to be used to maximum effect? Now, I know that we're only sober a day at a time, but if you take the aggregate of all the self-examination and the work and the effort and the trying to make sure that I've got it right that this group has done, it's incredible. It's incredible. And yet we continue, because we're human, to have these dependents. And so how is it that we can approach this stuff from a direction of security and not one of self-flagellation? So I know a lot of you nice people have never had any problem with self-flagellation when you've made a mistake, or I like to say that step 6 is kind of like spiritual whack-a-mole. You know, you bang down on that. There, we overcame gluttony, and then up pops lust. Oh no, not that again, and then greed, and then back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Or that idea that somehow, if only this will come to pass, then I'll be secure. And of course, the moment that does come to pass, that we do find a relationship or a job or this or that, or a food plan that works, or any number of things, and we get it, and then what happens? The mind pops up and says, this needs to be changed. Now, I've been waiting for 41 years for God to relieve me of my lust. My wife, Adele, has been waiting for 27 years for God to relieve me of my lust. And it doesn't cause the same problems that it used to. But then again, I don't know if that's spiritual evolution or just the fact that I've reached a certain time in walking on the planet. I have no idea. And that has nothing to do with how compelling I find her. But these demands that I make upon the universe, if only this happens, I'll do this. If only this happens, I'll do that. These are the things that keep me involved in the material world. This is what grounds me into the third dimension. And how is it that I get liberated into the fourth and then get to play in the fifth? And so how do we get into a relationship with ourselves that allows me to work through this these dependencies? And if you, in this essay, it seems to me that what Wilson really is pointing to is compassion. And compassion is, I think, just below gratitude as far as the highest of emotions. In our literature, it says, obviously, you can't transmit something you haven't got. And so when I take a look at being compassionate, and the whole thrust of the steps, especially 4 through 9, is shedding these old ideas and these old patterns and getting to the point where I have the ability to realize, to see with real eyes, how the forces that have been driving my life. And then once I see what it is that I've done, and that I then move into the amends, what happens is that I have the opportunity to actually get right-sized in a way that I never could before. And so this compassion that I start to have for others, gradually I can get for myself. But our program, and many of us, we get so driven on selfishness and self-centeredness that as we grow along spiritual lines, many people get afraid to work with self-compassion because they think that it's a lower form. But my experience is, and that's really why I was so excited to speak to you this evening, is that my experience is that self-compassion, the practice of mindful self-compassion, has allowed me to get free from the dependencies, and more importantly, to get free from the negative self-image and negative self-talk, which comes from again and again and again and again, not living up to whatever my particular ideal in whatever area that I am is. And so how do you get that? How do you get that? And so I want to talk to you about, and that's the great thing about workshops, is we don't have to be worried about being theologically correct and only working with AA literature and all that stuff. So it's a wonderful thing. There are two people. One is Christopher Germer, and the other is Kristen Neff. And they are the great lights behind a movement called Mindful Self-Compassion. And it's a way of actually being able to accept myself as I am in the moment, which I believe is the fruit of the 12 steps. And being prepared for whatever it is that love has to direct me towards. Chuck Chamberlain used to say that he only had one prayer in the morning. Pop, I'm reporting for duty. And how can I make sure that I am in a position to report for duty? So I'd like to take you into this. This is not the mindful self-compassion exercise, but I want to share with you something that came to me about 5 years ago, and I think it did more for shifting my consciousness along these lines of getting emotionally sober. So I'd like to beg your indulgence to take a little journey with me, and I think most of you have, some kind of a phone, or if you're really old school and you don't have a cell phone, the Mr. Coffee works really well because it's a 3-minute cycle, and 3 minutes is a perfect amount of time to meditate, because you can always find you can be late to 3 minutes to anything. And over the years, there's a lot of different things that I've done that, like having a timer go off once an hour when I was doing the Course in Miracles, and spending just 1 minute every hour in communion with the divine. But in order to be emotionally sober, my opinion, or my experiences, and that's not to say that I wasn't fabulously emotionally sober, especially in the 90s. But there's been a profound shift, and I'd like to share it with you. So I was doing this meditation, and it's called the I Love You meditation. Now, I'm not a child bearer. I'm not designed that way. So I have the whole thing about the inner child was something that I didn't really vibe with. But there is an innocence in me that as a male I can find quite easily. And there's an innocence in all of us. And so what I'd like to ask you to do, let me talk about the practice for just another minute. So what happened was I was doing this thing of putting my hand on my heart and saying, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Please forgive me. No one ever taught me how to love you. But I'm here now, and I love you. Now that takes about maybe a minute. And what came to me was to set my timer for every 22 minutes during the course of the day. And when the bell goes off, I would just put my hand on my heart and say, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Please forgive me. Nobody ever taught me how to love you. But I'm here now, and I love you. And after about 3 months of doing that, I dropped the please forgive me, because I had been able to demonstrate to whatever it is deep down inside me, this still small, not only my innocence, but also that place where I like to call it the Voyager resides. That thing, that personality that goes from life to life and existence to existence. And it changed. After 6 months, it changed just about everything in the way that I talk to myself. And then, and you go, well, 22 minutes, I mean, come on, I got a job, I got people I'm around and all that stuff. Well, what I did is that the phone would go off. If I was engaged in a meeting at work or something, or on a phone call, I just put my hand on my heart. And after a while, people at work would go, hey, what are you doing? And so I'd share the practice with them. And it was amazing how many of them did that. So this idea of being compassionate with myself is a fundamental tool for me now. And that I think that this speaks exactly to what Wilson was saying about cutting the dependency. I didn't want to come here and tell you what I think. I want to come and show you how I live. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, when I threw a newcomer in the car, I just didn't take him to the meeting. I'd take him around with me. Take him to my job, you know, I'd take him to my business. Take him home, let him see how I live. You know, this is the essence of the gift that you have given me. And so I'd like to ask you to just for a moment, let's all close our eyes. And put your hand on your heart. And we'll go through three rounds of saying I love you to yourself 4 times. Then the please forgive me. And you can just follow me, but we'll just do it 3 times and then we'll be done. So I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Please forgive me. No one ever taught me how to love you, but I'm here now, and I love you. 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 Please forgive me. No one ever taught me how to love you, but I'm here now, and I love you. 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 Please forgive me. No one ever taught me how to love you, but I'm here now, and I love you. Thank you very much, everyone. That's a practice that has brought incredible fruits, and I'd like to talk. Well, so what does emotional sobriety look like? What does it look like? What does it look like Friday? Friday, a man that I love very much and that I respect, who'd given me an opportunity, told me that because I'd been engaged in some other things that I couldn't be part of the team. And this upset me deeply because it was a job opportunity that I thought would work very well for me. And I've been in the event business for the past few years, and so the current thing is and so what happened? My initial reaction was not emotional sobriety. I thanked him. And then I walked across from the studio where I worked to my wife, and I sat down and told her of the conversation that we just had. Now, he also gave me an opportunity to do things a little differently, and so it's all good. It's all good, but still, it was a blow to my ego and to my pride. And then I sat down, and you know, one of the great things about being 41 years sober is you're really good at amends letters. So I just, you know, explained a little something to him, but that was, that's about as sober emotionally as I can be. A while ago, I was on a retreat, and it was the first retreat that I'd gone on for myself in probably 15 years. I've been leading them. I've been organizing them. It's what I do for a living. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, and it was just, it was something else. And so I'm on this retreat, and it was the first, you know, and I'm watching it, you know, and because I got the professional thing going, and I'm engaged with the people. They were people that I admired, and anyway, I reached a point where I was able to see how my inner critic, that one that sits there with the knife sharpener when you get to step 6 again, just working on it, just sharpening it up, just working that strap, getting ready. And I was able to see him and meet him. And I was able to tell him that job was no longer needed. That when I was in my early sobriety, that yeah, that was helpful, and I appreciate that. But that I didn't need, we didn't need that skill set anymore. And this came with that 22-minute practice. And what I was able to do at the end of that retreat was to have a wonderfully emotional, I mean, I was slinging snot so bad that I had to get up out of a group of 100 people and go spend some time. And then in a very solemn way, I left him there at the 1440. And I have to tell you that those dependencies and the vitriol with I would speak to myself on occasion has left. And I can think of no greater desire for you than to get to the point where that critic that has driven you is decommissioned. And as we decommission that in ourselves, then what happens is that we're able to be ready and available to have love use us in whatever fashion that it wants to use us. And the other fruit of this is that almost all of us have, you know, some PTSD. And I mean, just waking up with life forms with which you were unfamiliar when you left the house in the morning, I mean, that's traumatic. And some of us, I mean, you know, we spend all kinds of time ending up in situations like that. And when we talk about, and one of the great things about Alcoholics Anonymous is that it's set up perfectly for people that have been traumatized. The meetings start on time, they end on time. We don't crosstalk. It's a totally safe environment. The structure and you know, I mean, they call it in the big book, they call it post-war depression, referring to the guys in World War One. But we have these three levels that we talk about. There's the executive, there's the manager, and then there's the janitor. And when we get in a jam, what happens is, if we've been in trauma, is that the janitor is making all the decisions, not the executive or the manager. What meditation, what using the I love you or whatever compassion, the Tonglen prayers are perfect. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I find peace. And then I say it for the person that's agitating me. But that when I get in those situations, what I can learn to do is claim it. Oh, when I'm agitated, I can say to my wife, excuse me, darling, I don't have the executive function to have this conversation right now. And this is what emotional sobriety is to me. It's this ability not to be controlled by my emotions. I don't need to be afraid of my emotions because they are who I am at any given moment. And my sobriety has been dedicated to gradually peeling away all those things that block my feelings. Tobacco, food, all kinds of things. So, there is nothing that can hurt you. Yeah, there are events around it a lot. I'll take one minute. I want to talk a little bit about an experience I had recently. I almost lost my wife last summer, and she got really, really sick, and it looked like it was going to be time to let her go. And she's fine now. Or I mean, she's married to me, so forget the fine. But anyway, she's not in crisis anymore. She's stable, and what happened is that I was really scared, and I went to. I had a few new sponsees, so we were going to go through the book, and then I went through the. I went around my community, and I talked to 8 guys that I admired, and asked if they'd come over to my house once a week and go through the book, and they all said yes, and we had a wonderful experience. And in the course of that. I'm a smart guy, and I've been through the steps a zillion 5 times, and getting to step 3, and I mean, how is my wife's health my creation? My problems are of my own creation. Screw that. And I made the mistake of looking up the word protection. And the third definition was one that's very medieval, or if you're from the East Coast, very mafia. And it's a letter guaranteeing safe passage to the bearer. And when I thought about my life, I realized that I had always been protected. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't been hurt, brokenhearted, all kinds of stuff happening, all the things that happen as we walk through this world. But that innermost self cannot be hurt by anyone, even myself. And from that realization, can I live in the knowledge that I am always protected? Not by something anthropomorphic, but that this is available. Always. And it was a marvelous experience for me. And it helped me deeply. So I just want you to know that there's nobody that, well, no, everybody on this screen loves AA as much as I do. And I believe that each of you are diving to the absolute depth that you can in this. But I'd just like to encourage you and tell you that that there is no cap on your spiritual evolution. A great friend of ours gave me a wonderful metaphor, and I'll close with this. He said, when I die, I'm going to be lying in a field. I'm going to pop up, and there's going to be a gate. And I'm going to walk across the field. I'm going to open the gate. And there God is. And God's going to say, Jay, how the heck are you? Did you have a good time? And I'm going to look at him, and I'm going to go, did you see what happened back there? Did you see what Adele went through? Did you see what happened with my daughter here a little while ago? I mean, did you get that? What do you mean, did I have a good time? And God, love as I understand, love is going to look at me and say, Jay, you begged me to drop you off at the amusement park. I told you that I was going to meet you at this time and in this place. Now, did you have a good time? And upon reflection, your friend Jay never stayed on Small World. It's a Small World for more than one ride. Take me to Space Mountain, baby. So, God bless you and thanks a lot.
Oh man, thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to join us. You can see on the Zoom call who you may want to call on. Is there anybody you'd like to hear from? We'll kick it off there and then we'll open it up.
Well, I met a very fascinating alcoholic by the name of Mary Jane. What is up, girlfriend?
All right. She is fascinating. We love her. Hold on.
Thank you so very much, Jay. Fascinating and work to do. But I really appreciate your share.
Thanks, sweetie. Is Lorenz there? Michael?
I thought I saw him on here somewhere. Hang on. Mike Lorenz, you around?
You may have gotten a better idea.
Yeah, I'm there, Uncle. So thanks. I heard a lot of the people I love, including you and Adele. Yeah, gave me some new things to think about. Thank you for giving me Germer all those years ago. Yeah, I've enjoyed it and I've shared it. So thanks a lot, Uncle.
I love you, nephew. Mary Thayer, how are you, girlfriend?
Hey, Jay, so good to hear you. And so good to hear that Adele is feeling better. I really appreciated what you said. I was listening about how you said it seems to wrap around that 6 and 7 step. And I experienced the same. It's the more I'm like yourself, the more I continue to kind of do the drill here on the steps. And I start to see the things that have been blocking me. I've spent more time in meditation and waiting on the Lord in those areas. And I've realized, similar to your meditation, I realized as time went on and I would be pondering where I am, I didn't have compassion or forgiveness at all. And it was in the 6th and 7th step that I finally understood that I was through a 7th step and ready for my 8th step when I started to feel compassion for myself as well as others. And for myself, when I get to the 8th step, the top of my 8th step list is that presence that I ask forgiveness for. That's God, or the God of my experience, or that I've come to know is present. I really feel it'll be on the top of my 8th and 9th step for the rest of my life, because even at night in my nightly review with the 11th step, at the end, when it says we ask God's forgiveness and what corrective measures to take, I always seem to end with saying, God, please forgive me. I've been doing your job again. I've been doing your job again. And it's so accurate for myself and my own thing that I feel as though alcoholism is a soul sickness. And I feel as though these 12 steps are the most profound tools, and they're spiritual tools that can help us to evolve. And as you said, it's limitless, and it can go on for as long as we want it to go on. It's very dependent on who you are or what, but you're right. I think there's a group of us here that continue to be seasoned beginners. We've gained enough through our own experience, humility, I think, where we accept where we are right now, not where people try to put us, but where we are right now. And we work with a presence that I find is present. And when I don't have that, I don't have any emotional sobriety. It's great to see you, my friend. Love you.
Me too. Let's see if there's anything that Adele would like to correct me about. Baby, what's up?
Adele, alcoholic. I have no corrections. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. And I have to tell you guys, he's the real deal. He doesn't talk about this stuff or espouse it, or he actually does it. And it's a privilege to be with him.
Ooh.
I love you, baby.
Well, Tom Yule, do you have anything to counter that with, please?
Not a thing. Thanks so much, Jay. I love you, and that was great. It was wonderful. You know what kept coming back to me is we had a mutual friend, guy Clint Hodges, who passed away some time back. And towards the end of his life, he made this statement, and he said, you know, I've come to a place of compassion with that part of myself that's broken and will never get it, and to love that place. And you know, that's been really a helpful thing for me. You know, and you're right. You know, once you start once you stop treating yourself so terribly and judging yourself so harshly, you know, it's a lot easier to stop being the judge and the critic of other people. You know. Which is, then you're not doing God's job, and it's just a much lighter existence, you know, when you can get to that place. Yeah, I really, you know what's happened to me, Brian P. talks a lot about compassion. And, you know, and for me, compassion is that my humanness connects with the other person's humanness. You know, I see myself in them. I get past to feel their pain, but you know, I feel for them. I feel for their life experience. And so the criticism ends, you know, at a certain point. And it doesn't end for good, but, you know, it's just a great place to have evolved to, man. I'm telling you. Thank you so much. I love you too, Jay.
Thank you. Hey, Shorty P, can you channel Brian for us?
Hey, Jay. Good to see you. It really is. And you were right on. And I really appreciate your meditation in the beginning, where it brought me back to my first meeting, because I was really able to go there. And so I just want to thank you. I feel like I've been on Space Mountain Ride for about 2 years. So I it's so easy for me to be compassionate about to other people, but never to forgive myself. So I really appreciate that exercise. I really do. And I don't know if you'll remember this, you may, but you were at my house 18 years ago up in Maine, and just being around your presence was like soothing. And I remember asking Chloe, like, where's Jay at? And you were way down in our field out there on a rock meditating for about 20 minutes. And I'm like, that's where I want to go. And so I appreciate you so much. You've always been kind to me, and thank you.
Good to see you. Hey, Kurt, what up?
I think we're having an earthquake out here. Hey, I'm Kurt Zimmerman, alcoholic. Jay, good to see you. It's funny, I was, I had a bunch of things going through my head, and one of them was out of a book. And it's Rohr's book, and it's in his first step. And this is what kept coming to me. It's, you will not learn to actively draw upon a larger source until your usual resources are depleted and revealed as wanting. In fact, you won't even know there's a larger source until your own sources and resources have failed you. Now, and that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about, well, a lot. I was thinking about when Rhonda called in a panic and had Bill Cleveland send a truck over, throw me in the back of a pickup truck because I was drunk after drinking after 19 years. And they brought me to that retreat up there, and you were there, and Bill was there, and Koyas was there, and I couldn't get released again after drinking. I could not get released. And you talked about prayer, and I thought about that prayer that was given to me to say for Rhonda, and I thought about that night when I experienced that grace, that release in my house. And I thought about what was revealed, and I say this because I know I've talked to you about this. There was, and I only know how to say it like this, there was an internal revelatory experience that happened that night that changed me. And it gave me access to something that I was always trying to believe in, but could never believe in. It was always something I was supposed to believe in, but I couldn't believe in it. And, we all say it in different ways. I was touched, I was given grace, I was accessed this power, however you want to say it. But one of the things that was really obvious that night was, and I relate this to Bill's statement at the very end of this letter, said, I was finally given a quiet place in the sunshine. And what I got out of that experience, and this was 10 years ago, and I have not moved from it in 10 years. I've tried to cultivate this for 10 years, is this. What I experienced in that house that night was the only one that was judging me was me, no one else. And that was so clear that it changed me. And, like you said, it's a gift. I mean, that we're here, that we're all here. This is, it's a tremendous gift. And, I leave it at this, I thank God I'm not suffering from what's not happening anymore, because that was half of my problem. I was always creating stories and things in my head, and, I lived in my head. Now, I didn't know that until I got out of my head. And anyways, it's good to see you. Adele, it's good to see you. And thanks for coming out and sharing with us, buddy.
Sam, is that, have we hit the time? What do we do? If anybody's got any questions, or I'd be delighted to.
So we have until 9 o'clock, Jay, our time. Yeah. So we have plenty of time. We can open it up for anybody who has any questions. I know I'm going to have some if anybody else doesn't in a few minutes. So let me see if I can see where people are raising their hands. If anybody could raise their hand who wants to share, and I'll call on them or have a question or comment for Jay.
Well, I got my buddy Dulcie here. What's up, girl?
Thanks, Jay. Thank you so much. I'm Dulcie and I'm an alcoholic. I loved every minute of it. Thank you so much. And I was reflecting back on my first meeting, it was in April Fool's 78, and Chuck C was the speaker at my first meeting. And he made a comment that night. He said, if you're looking for God, you ain't gonna find him, because that which you're looking for, you're looking with. And I thought, I have no idea what that means. And I wrote it in my first big book. And I thought, if I hang around these people long enough, I'm going to find out what that means. And then I progressed along a lot and really hit meditation, and I couldn't get enough. And I had to go to so many retreats and just sit in that silence and meditate and hang. You know, I was so active in Alcoholics Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous and Al-Anon, and you name it, I was there. Because that which I was looking for, I was looking with, and I was still looking. And thank God, after, you know, Humpty Dumpty got put back together again, it happened. But I also had a very strict teacher, spiritual teacher, that had a comment to me early on: break all attachments or they will be broken for you. And that was kind of a harsh way of putting Bill's letter of emotional sobriety. And I took to his letter early on. I knew that I had to have something far greater, that the day would come, perhaps, that I didn't even have all of you. And I'm just so grateful. I have Jay, and I did a terrible thing. I invited him out here to speak because I knew he'd fall in love, or hoped he'd fall in love with it, here in Sedona. And sure enough, 3 months later, they moved here, and they've been in my vortex ever since, and I love it. Thank you so much, Jay. It was gorgeous.
Love you, baby.
Hey, Jay, I feel like if I didn't ask this question, I might be doing a disservice having you here with everybody. You've done a pretty extensive research on Bill's life, and you said you were writing a book about his life from 1955 to 1970, or to the end of it. Can you expound a little bit upon, and you've done everything from deep research into the Oxford movement to the beginning of all of this. Can you talk a little bit about his evolution from 1955?
Yeah, well, the main thing is that, there's a couple of things. When this essay is written in 1958, Wilson is involved with his psychiatrist, Dr. Humphrey Osmond, from the Weyburn Clinic up in Saskatchewan. And they're working on a medication, and it wasn't really shelf stable, and so the depression that he was fighting was, it was really, he was as bad a depressive as anybody that you can think of. Couple things, he was, if you could imagine being the point of contact of the entire fellowship as we're all getting sober. Guy got hundreds of letters a week from people generally that were not having a good time, that were looking to him for guidance. One of the fascinating things, and I've got some friends here who are about as, I've been privileged to read over 500 of his personal letters. So the relationship that I have with Bill Wilson isn't Bill Wilson, the co-founder of AA. or really the founder of AA. It's not Bill Wilson as a figure within the fellowship. It's more the guy at the coffee shop, because he's sharing things from his heart, and he's isn't concerned about people capping on him. And I think one thing that I'd really like to tell you guys, especially because here we are diving deeply into an essay that Bill did in 1958, trying to plumb the depths of it, get all the wisdom out of it. Same thing we do with the big book and the 12 and 12. He never once says, go to chapter 4, page 3, the third paragraph, and there you'll find the solution to your problem. Never once does he tell anybody to look in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Never once does he tell them. So I mean that was probably the most mind-blowing, because when I first started getting enthusiastic about this thing, of course, was I wanted to read the stuff, find out about the Oxford group, why it was that they had such a great success rate. Now that we don't seem to have the same success rate, what happened, so that I can sponsor alcoholics correctly. And so I spent a lot of time, especially when I was early in my investigation with the Oxford group and things, a lot of times talking about what Bill meant. Notice that I didn't say that once in this talk, because the more I got to know him, the more all of this desire for somebody that would provide direction and certainty, that's not the guy. That's not the guy. And I have a much profounder respect for him today than I ever have. Another thing is kind of fun. In 1956, in August of 1956, Bill has his first psychedelic therapy. And the fruit of that, and this is all medically supervised, by the way. I mean, I don't want you to, and when I say LSD, believe me, you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, because back then it was medicine, not something recreational. I like to, in the book, one of the things I talk about is the difference between the psychedelic experience and the hallucinogenic experience. I think, the hallucinogenic one is phenomenon-based. The psychedelic experience is a spiritually guided and led experience. And from 1956 on, what happened is that he realized that he got a confirmation of what happened at Towns. And there was always something in him that said, and if you look at the way that he describes his relationship with God and that experience and all that, prior to 1956, it's always, it's the hot flash, it's this, it's that, and another thing. Once he got the confirmation, he was able to not only speak about his relationship with the power, but also to create some incredible things for us that could only be grounded in a relationship with the power that is beyond our ability to describe. Let's see, what other fun things? Here's a thing. Back to this letter that I happen to have out from 1962. So this is after the International in Los Angeles and the like, and Lois and Bill are basically housebound. They can't get out, because anytime they go anyplace, people in the fellowship are demanding all kinds of things from him. But he keeps wanting to resign. He keeps wanting to step away, and he did in St. Louis, but I mean, like, who do you know that walks away from a movement they created? George Washington, Krishnamurti with Theosophy, Bill Wilson with AA. He wanted to get away because he wanted AA before he left his physical form to demonstrate what I spoke of earlier about the dependence on the fellowship's dependence upon God and not old timers. Anyway, he says later on, he says, from here on, Lois and I are going to try and balance our lives by taking some interest in the world around us. For myself, I've become interested in the invention of turning heat from the sun into electricity at a very high yield, something that will make some power available, I believe, to underdeveloped countries. There is also an association with some top research doctors respecting material that can counteract adrenaline and thereby ease physical tensions without resort to addiction-forming pills and the like. And of course, my old yen is still present to get into the psychic field, as I feel that the proof of survival in scientific terms could be something of high value to those who have no way of making even a beginning in things spiritual. So, I mean, this guy played with some of the most incredible intellectuals in the 50s and 60s. He was a player, and he was well respected by people that had nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous, and that he was involved in some really, really incredible projects. My prayer for you is that you take the gift of sobriety and you refract it through your own creativity, and you keep your heart ready for the inspirations that will allow you to make contributions or to just be able to give a cold glass of water on a hot day to another person. So that's a thumbnail on it.
That's beautiful. Can we have anybody want to raise their hand? Problem we have with these is that most people, after they listen to somebody who's done a well thought out presentation on this, we usually just want to listen. So I got to pick on people.
Well thought out.
Yeah. Or just an intentional, mindful.
My name's Terry, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Terry.
Hi. I really have enjoyed this very much. Thank you. You hit on some great points for me, and I love the, I really liked the beginning meditation, because I did see the room that I started with here in Tucson. And you brought up a number of things, how important steps 6 and 7 are for me in this. It's been from the beginning that that's how I start my day. That's what brings me into the mystery of each day, that, you know, I don't know what the day is going to bring to me, but I at least know what I'm bringing to the day to start with. And one of the things that I really felt that stood out today was living that life of non-duality, where I've given up that the meanings, those things emotionally that divided me, the right and wrong, the up and down, the left and right. And that's a big thing for me today in maintaining emotional sobriety, is to live a more non-dualistic life. And in closing, when you mentioned your vision of lying in a field, you reminded me of a quote from Rumi that
Oh yeah, yeah.
Out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. So with that, thank you. Thank you very much. It was very enjoyable, and it was good to meet everybody and hear everybody. Thank you.
Cool. Cool, cool.
Hey Jay, what are some of the things that you and Adele do now for fun? You know, you're sober. You've been studying and researching and reading and praying and meditating. What's a fun week to Adele and Jay look like?
Well, every morning, my devotion starts with bringing the goddess a double espresso with just the right amount of foamed oat milk. Then we get on a meditation call with our friend Matthew and some folks from 6 a.m. our time, which is 8 a.m. for you. And we met somebody from the group does a little reading, and then we meditate together for 20 minutes. Then we'll take a walk down to Oak Creek, and let me do this real quick, just because I can show off. And this is what we look at. This is Cathedral Rock. It's the most powerful feminine vortex in Sedona. And so we go down there, we walk down.
Jay, you muted him. Jay, you're muted.
Okay, there. Well, I'm good? Okay. So then we walk back, and then she gets on another meditation. And then I go and I do, here's something fun for you. Anybody ever done the sensory deprivation tanks? Where you float in the water in the dark. Well, we've got a hot tub here that's kind of large, and I literally will go and do a floating meditation for about 20 minutes. That's really a marvelous thing. And then I'll make her some vegan pancakes 3 days a week, and we kind of go off into our day. Most entertaining things are the reports of from the field that we get from all over the world with folks that are walking this path with us, and then the other thing that we do is we've got my poor long-suffering wife. You know, I'm a futurist. I'm a philosopher. I'm a historian. I want Alcoholics Anonymous to be available for 100 years, and what's that going to take? Which brings me to a point. I was asked, Dulcie, in fact, asked me to give a talk on the seventh tradition. Oh boy, that's going to be fun. So anyway, I'm getting ready to go do this talk, and what occurred to me was that I was not a participating member of Alcoholics Anonymous in the way that I was when I was new. And this is what came to me. I took a look, and I got sober in 1979. And once they taught me, when my first 30 days, don't put any money in the basket. After that, you better have a job. And if you don't have a job, you better get a job. But after that, then we expect you to put $1 in the basket every time, right? So my first few years of sobriety, I'm going to, 10, 11 meetings a week. And I'm putting $1 in at every meeting I go to. And now I'm, 35 years sober at the time, and I'm going to maybe 2 meetings a week, putting in $5. And then I took a look at each meeting. If I go to 3 meetings, it's 15, no big deal. But when I took a look at what a $1979 bought, it was $3.79. So I'm putting in like a third of what I was putting in when I was new. What the hell is wrong with me? So Adele and I sat down and we decided to start treating Alcoholics Anonymous, as we would any of the other nonprofits that we're involved in. And if you are not, I'm not talking to the guys that are in there and gals that are in your first couple of years of sobriety or that are scuffling, but if you're not making donations regularly to AA.org and your central office and the way that we collect and distribute money in Alcoholics Anonymous is in the 18th century. And we need to get into the 20th. And if we did this one thing, we got maybe 1.75 million members in North America. If each of us that were sober a while, that had jobs, would put in $20 a month, say maybe we had 500,000 people that actually were able to do that. We could make all of our literature free. It would be the first time that Alcoholics Anonymous was ever self-supporting. And we've got to go to work. We've been riding on the coattails of our literature sales, and that's ended, baby. And we have to step up and start carrying our own weight and not treating AA like it's the last thing in our life when it's the thing that gave us the life that we got. Now, that's just an opinion, but it's a really good one, and it should be yours. Go to AA.org, members, donations, get a monthly withdrawal, and see what happens to your spiritual evolution.
We got a couple seconds left or a couple minutes left. I got two things for you. One time I heard you talk about before 1939 in the big book, we often hear our members joke around. He said, we have Alcoholics Anonymous more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And you always hear people say, well, Bill's a great exaggerator. There wasn't really 100 people, blah, blah, blah. And I heard you do the, I believe it was you who did the historical treaty on that and found that it actually was 100 men and women.
It's yeah.
Is that true?
Yes, there's a wonderful historian in New Jersey that actually got the names and the numbers, and he went through he did the whole thing on the recovery rate that they talk about in the second edition, and it's wonderful. Now, whether it was 100 or 85 or I mean, the 100 people. Hank Parkhurst was the one who put the list together, and he says, oh, and by the way, if you haven't read the book, The Writing of the Big Book, buy it. It's by William Shaberg. It's fantastic. It's got all kinds of wonderful stuff along these lines in it. But people got sober, and they weren't engaged in meetings like we are. And so it was like, well, there's 15, and we're sure they're sober, but we don't know where they are. Wilson, one of the fascinating things that Wilson always talks about is AA being a spiritual kindergarten from which each of us is free to graduate at any time and in any place that they choose. I'd kick him out of my meeting, he'd say something like that. Oh, another one was, how about this? The steps are to be taken in whatever order or whatever time is appropriate to the person and to their God. I'd have him Buddha. We'd tar and feather him out of the Hermosa Beach Men's Stag. And what else you got?
Heresy.
Heresy.
Heresy. The other thing, whatever happened to Roland Hazard? Last thing, if you know. I don't ever. Yeah.
Died. Well, I mean, one of the fascinating things everybody is again, this is my opinion. Anybody that was sober in the Oxford group we cannot use the AA formula on those people.
Did Roland Hazard die sober?
Don't know. Did he drink 3 or 4 times after being with Bill? Absolutely, we know this. But see, those people, what AA brought was the sobriety date and keeping that date sacred and counting forward from there. Previous with the OG, what they're doing is Christ is relieving them of their drink problem. And after a time, maybe they feel that they can have a drink again because they don't have the same problems with self and the like. Unfortunately, many of those people returned and became sober, active members of Alcoholics Anonymous. But anyway, yeah, Roland passed, I think, in 1947.
Well, Jay, we're out of time. I could hang out with you for hours, man. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And the way we close this up is we just mute ourselves and quietly, inwardly say the Lord's Prayer. So if everybody wants to just kind of quiet down, close your eyes, and join us. Amen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And Don, for next week, for everybody who wants to know, Don L. is going to be our speaker. And everyone's invited. Thank you all for joining. You're welcome to unmute yourself and visit for as long as you wish. And thanks again, Jay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Good seeing you, Adele.
Yes, baby.
Thank you, Jay.
So good to see
Thank you,
everyone.
Adele.
Thank
you,
Jay.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Adele. Nice to meet you.
Nice.
Sit around.
Nice to see you, Jay and Adele. Wonderful to see you. Blessing.
Okay.
To you too, Jay.
Thanks, Mary Thayer.
They did say thanks and hello, goodbye.
Okay.
Or is that Mary Jane? Hi, Amy.
Hey, Kimberly.
Oh, it's so fast.
I know.
I guess Sam got off the meeting. I want to tell him what a great job he did.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, good to see you.
Love you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay.
Asking about Roland Hazard like it was Ginny Hoffa. It's like,
Well, Thomas.
Nice. All right. See you guys later. Thank you.
Night.
Bye.
Good night and good luck.